Unit 13 is abnormal psychology, so let's jump right into it. Psychological disorders consist of deviant, distressful, and dysfunctional behavior patterns. Mental health workers view psychological disorders as persistently harmful thoughts, feelings, and actions. Standards of deviant behavior vary by culture, context, and even time. For example, children once regarded as fidgety, distractible, and impulsive are now being diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Critics question whether the label is being applied to healthy school children who, in more natural outdoor environments, would seem perfectly normal. Although the proportion of children treated for this disorder has increased dramatically, the pervasiveness of the diagnosis depends in part on teacher referrals. So, others counter-argue that the more frequent diagnoses of ADHD reflect increased awareness of the disorder, particularly in those areas where the rates are the highest. The medical model assumes that psychological disorders are mental illnesses that need to be diagnosed on the basis of their symptoms and cured through therapy. Critics argue that psychological disorders may not reflect a deep internal problem, but instead a difficulty in the person's environment, in the person's current interpretation of events, or in the person's bad habits and poor social skills. Psychologists who reject the sickness idea typically contend that all behavior arises from the interaction of nature, which is genetic, and some physiological factors, and nurture, like past and present experiences. The biopsychosocial approach assumes that disorders are influenced by genetic predispositions and physiological states, inner psychological dynamics, and social and cultural circumstances. The DSM-4-TR is the current authoritative scheme for classifying psychological disorders. This volume is the American Psychiatric Association's Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, 4th edition, updated in 2000 as a text revision. And this classification scheme assumes the medical model and will be more substantially revised as the DSM-5, which, like I said, will appear in May of this year, 2013. DSM diagnoses were developed in coordination with the International Classifications of Diseases, which is the ICD-10. Most health insurance policies in North America require an ICD diagnosis before they will pay for the therapy. So the DSM describes various disorders and has high reliability. For example, 2 clinicians who are working independently and applying the guidelines are likely to reach the same diagnosis. And as a complement to the DSM, some psychologists are offering a manual of human strengths and virtues, which is called the UNDSM. Critics point out that labels can create preconceptions that bias. I'm going to go through this, but these are psychological disorders and how they are diagnosed through the DSM. So, critics point out that labels can create preconceptions that bias our perceptions of people's past and present behavior and unfairly stigmatize these individuals. And labels can also serve as self-fulfilling prophecies. However, diagnostic labels help not only to describe a psychological disorder, but also to enable mental health professionals to communicate about their cases, to comprehend the underlying causes, and to discern effective treatment programs. So the label insanity raises moral and ethical questions about how society should treat people who have disorders and have committed crimes.